Welcome to Chowder and Grits, the podcast for Virginia Tech and ACC sports. I'm Justin Cochiola alongside Tim Hirth. It's Friday, November 5th. We're talking Virginia Tech football. The Hokies take on Boston College tonight in Chestnut Hill. Hokies haven't won in Chestnut Hill since 2017, so they need to get off the pine there. We're also going to preview Hokies men basketball. It's basketball season, Tim. Basketball season right around the corner. We're going to look at week 9 in the ACC, recap that action, week 10 in the ACC coming up, make some picks, do some lines. But before all that, Tim, chop on.
Hey, I love to hear you say that. And I could listen, this podcast could be nothing but you repeating chop on for 60 minutes. And I think that would be fine with me. It's an amazing feeling when your team finally wins a World Series after decades of playoff failures, and to do it against a team as honorable as the Houston Astros just made it even sweeter.
So honorable, really the epitome of ethics in sports. That's on my wall, Tim.
Yeah.
Little Orioles action. And hey, that's not going to make for good audio. We're on YouTube for the first time. So if you guys like watching YouTube videos instead of listening on a Spotify app or Apple Podcasts, and jump over to YouTube, Chowder and Grits channel, we'll blast it out, watch us there. But yeah, I was just showing the Baltimore Orioles Hex head art sign that I have hanging up, and I was happy for the Braves. I was pulling for the Braves. Grew up in Richmond, went to a ton of Richmond Braves games, watched so many guys go through that AAA system and go on to Atlanta. So I was happy for the Braves. I just always wonder this time of year what it's like to watch your favorite team even just play in a World Series.
It's got to be difficult for you.
I don't know that feeling. It's never happened in my lifetime.
I respect you, Orioles guys. That's not a fun place to be. But Adley Rutschman, right? They're prospects. They're always prospects in the pipeline.
Adley Rutschman, you got Grayson Rodriguez coming up, DL Hall. So, we'll see what happens. But Tim, you're a new homeowner.
I am, again.
Yeah.
Feels real nice. The only problem is you are out memorabiliaing me right now. I've got what is the white conversion van version of a basement right now. So hopefully I'll be able to get some stuff hung up now that I'm not in DC, because we moved on the weekend and then on Monday I was in DC. So I haven't had really time to do anything.
No, I get that. It took me quite a while to get this place set up, but I've got I got a bunch of stuff in here. What I wanted to mention, the first thing I noticed was you didn't have a picture of me.
Well, that's because it's facing me right now.
I've got a picture of you right here on my desk every day. That is you, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
So it looks like you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're glad you're here. We took a little time off last week. We had some life things get in the way, as that does occasionally happen. We weren't abandoning ship on you after an abysmal loss to Syracuse at home, which we'll talk about briefly. Hokies obviously rebounded with the win last week against Georgia Tech, but let's start off with some basketball, Tim. We're going to start off with basketball tonight. It's going to be some fun.
I'm good with that.
I'm super excited. So next Tuesday, I believe, November 9th. November 9th is the day the Hokies open up against Maine. Okay, so not a tough opponent there, but it's just going to be great to see Mike Young and the Virginia Tech Hokies back on the basketball court. Some of the key dates for you. So we've got November 24th, NIT season tip-off. First matchup is going to be with number 12, Memphis. That's going to be in Brooklyn. And then the other two teams playing in that are Xavier and Iowa State. So win, lose, you still got some solid programs you're going up against. So that's, I love November men's college basketball because you have so many like awesome, just little, I don't even know what you call them, like pocket tourneys. You've got the NIT season tip-off, Thanksgiving week. You've got the Maui Invitational, which the Hokies played in a couple years ago. You've got, I don't know, all kinds of things. So you just keep
Yeah.
every time you turn into ESPN, there's some kind of basketball tournament going on.
Well, that app
So
just is crucial this time of year. I mean, when college basketball starts and virtually every college basketball game is now televised, that means there is never not sports on. And whether that be, a throwaway game with Lafayette and Lehigh or, whoever else is playing. Some of the best games I watched last year were those small colleges going at it on ESPN3 with, an announcer who's probably a sophomore comm major over there, just going wild at every basket. That's
yeah,
awesome. And
yeah,
I'm excited for that season to roll around.
yeah. There's no doubt. So some of the other big matchups, and I mean, I'm going to go through them, and most of the big matchups are before January 1st, which is interesting. So you've got December 1st, Big Ten ACC matchup. Hokies are playing number 21 Maryland. December 4th is the ACC opener against Wake Forest. That's in Castle Coliseum. December 17th, you've got the Basketball Hall of Fame shootout. That's against number 23 St. Bonaventure. And then you follow that up with 2 road games at number 9 Duke on December 22nd and number 19 UNC on December 29th. So before January 1st rolls around, before 2022 strikes the calendar, there's going to be a lot that we know about this basketball team. I mean, that is quite the slate heading into kind of the bulk of conference play. And then after the new year, you've got a road game at UVA on January 12th. Then you're on the road at FSU. You're only playing FSU once. That's January 29th. And then, a really kind of lovely matchup against the Wahoos on Valentine's Day, which super sweet, if you ask me. And then you host UNC on February 19th. Then you just throw in a bunch of the other kind of mid-tier programs in the ACC with NC State, Clemson, things like that. So a lot of high-profile matchups, a lot of opportunity for Virginia Tech to add some respect to their name. I'm a little surprised they weren't in the top 25 to start the season. I mean,
Yeah.
we're looking at a bunch of preseason polls, like the way too early polls and things like that. And, we saw Virginia Tech as high as, I didn't go back and check, but I want to say like 12 to 15 range.
Yeah.
And now they're just unranked, which, any college basketball preview you read about the ACC, it's almost like Virginia Tech doesn't exist, which is interesting because they made the NCAA tournament last year. And there was even an article on ESPN previewing the ACC, and they talked about the top 4 teams in their opinion, which was Duke, Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida State. And then some of the others that made the tournament last year, Clemson, NC State, they make the tournament last year. Another one, and they didn't even mention Virginia Tech, which was shocking. But then they say, oh, the team that we're overlooking is Virginia Tech. So that's where they came up in the article. So pretty interesting. But, that'll obviously settle itself on the court. Let's take a look at some of the guys returning, Tim, some of the guys that I like. So you've got Keve Luma, obviously, named the preseason All-ACC team. He was an absolute stud last year.
Mm-hmm.
Did struggle in some of the big games last year against North Carolina in the ACC tournament. Was okay in the NCAA tournament game, but ended up averaging 15 points, 8 rebounds. He was really kind of the only big man that Virginia Tech had. And I think they're going to have a few more options there this year, at least it feels like. If you look at the guards, I mean, you've got Justin Mutz who's coming back. He's
a dog.
He's a game changer. I think he's like the biggest game changer Tech has had since Deron Washington, as far as like a guy who can go out there and like just change the momentum on one play, whether it's a block, whether it's a big dunk. I mean, that guy just has like a tremendous amount of power in that profile of his. And then you got Naheem Aline and Hunter Couture. So, those 5 are probably going to be, or that core group there is probably going to be in your starting 5. And then you add in a guy in Storm Murphy that we'll talk about in a second as far as one of the newcomers. But, Aline shot almost 41% from 3 last year. From all accounts, he looks even better in camp this year. Couture is going to be a guy who's probably in and out of the starting lineup depending on the matchup, but
Right.
somebody who is going to be a sharpshooter off the bench and really be somebody that the Hokies rely on. And then, David and Goosen, am I saying that right?
That's a tough one, man. I think
Yeah,
it's yeah. I don't even want to
can't
attempt it
remember
right
the
now.
pronunciation.
Yeah.
But averaged almost 10 minutes per game as a true freshman last year. He's somebody that Mike Young has been super high on in the preseason press. So I'd look for him to really kind of play that complementary role to a Luma when a Luma comes out of the lineup, or potentially even being in the lineup at the same time. He'll give the Hokies some much added size. And then, you got guys like John Ojiaku and Darius Maddox. Ojiaku is a guy who's really battled injury, but it sounds like, he's going to be able to contribute at least a little bit this year. Darius Maddox hasn't really been getting a ton of buzz. I mean, if you think back to him, he was highly touted. I think he was a top 80 recruit in the 2020 class. You'd like to think he's going to have a role this year. We just haven't really heard his name much from Mike Young. So something to watch there. But any other comments there as far as, just returning and kind of what to expect?
No, I mean, what to expect, we kind of have a good idea of based on what we've seen. I mean, we all know the system. We know the strengths right now. Obviously, the strengths in the team are 1 through 5, both can stretch the floor. And I think that's huge. It's a huge weapon as far as defensive matchups go and mismatches in particular. So being able to stretch the floor with literally any one of your players is a huge advantage, especially in a Mike Young offense, which relies so much on ball movement on the perimeter, trying to find that 3-point shot, being that it's predicated on it, even if the shooters aren't the best, which has been a little bit of an issue in years past. And that's not me picking on anyone in particular. But, you get shooters that may not shoot the ball well, wide open looks. It doesn't always work out in your favor. And that was an Achilles heel that would pop up time to time. The good news is now with this roster, you're basically going to have anybody that gets open should be able to pull the 3 with no hesitation. I feel like it's a strong roster for a Mike Young style team. A lot of good passers, which I think is a huge key to this offense being successful. One of the issues, and I don't know how big of an issue is going to be, is there's not a lot of athleticism that jumps off the page when you look down the roster. And where I see that maybe being an issue is defense. This isn't a team that I expect to play extremely good defense. I think it will be a little tough. Interior, exterior, it could be rough. I mean, that could be a problem, but I think if you're going into this season, you're planning on out shooting everyone anyway. So depending on the shots falling, you should be fine. But on off nights, having to fall back on that defense, we'll have to see. The jury's still out on that. But other than that, we've got to rebound well. And last year was hard. Luma, I thought, rebounded extremely well given the task that was put in front of him. But at times against bigger teams, you mentioned North Carolina, you could tell they really wanted to pick on him. They went after him physically. And you could see at times it affected his game. And, I think Luma will be able to be played at the 4 a little bit more. Won't be relying on him as a 5 in that case as much, although he's obviously going to be able to give you minutes there. I'm excited. I mean, as far as the Mike Young style of basketball, I think this team is far more suited for that style and what he wants to do than any other team he's had, just because of the 3-point prowess of the players that we have on the roster and the ability to stretch the floor. It's something we haven't had to this point.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point defensively. I mean, I'd say probably their best defender is Justin Mutz as far as like the guys who are going to be starting.
Yeah.
I don't know if Radford was a great defender, but what he gave you was, rebounding and, the ability to block some shots. So
the ability to create his own shot in a way that is also
so offensively
relentless.
Big loss, especially just from, like you said, creating your own shot and then the offensive rebounding. He small in stature, but the guy just knows how to rebound. I mean, he's a phenomenal rebounder. So that is a big loss. Probably one of the reasons I think Virginia Tech dropped out of the top 25 in the preseason poll was Radford's dismissal from the team and going on to Texas A&M. But it is what it is. Wabisa Bede is another guy who, not known for his offense, but, big
But
time kind
defense.
of defender, very physical. So, that's a guy who will be missed in certain situations. But if we kind of look at rivals, and the guy who's going to be replacing Bede is Storm Murphy. And,
Hmm.
depending on, what interview you're listening in, Stormer, Rat, Paperboy, you never know
That
what
was a
Mike
good
Young is
one.
going to call the guy. But, he seems to be a pretty big fan. And, Murphy was a 4-year starter at Wofford, started 120 out of 126 games. His first 2 years, Mike Young was there, Keve Luma was there. So there's definitely some chemistry that he's going to bring in. And then, before Mike Young came here, that Wofford team made it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. So
That's right.
they've been there before. That's some good experience. I think he's going to fit in perfectly with this team and give them a dynamic threat there at the point guard position, and somebody who can score. I mean, Virginia Tech really hasn't had that since Justin Robinson, and Robinson was a huge part of that Sweet 16 team. Obviously, was a leader on the floor, and I really kind of expect Murphy to pick up that role. He averaged almost 18 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists per game last year. So, I think that's just big time production that the Hokies are going to look for. You also add into the mix Sean Padula at point guard, who sounds like he's going to play a fairly big role. So Mike Young seems to be pretty high on this kid. Highly touted. He was the number 2 player in the state of Oklahoma, 165th overall in the recruiting class, and should really give the Hokies some nice production off the bench at the point guard position. And then another arrival, Lynn Kidd at center. Only played 1 year at Clemson before transferring, but probably somebody who can play in that center role when needed, but didn't play a whole lot at Clemson. So it'll kind of remain to be seen kind of what he can do. Anything I missed there from an arrival standpoint? Anything you're looking forward to?
No, I think you're spot on. I think all eyes are on Storm at the moment. He seems to be a guy that can do quite a few different things to help your team win ball games offensively. He certainly got the stat line to back it up. And, from a team that still played pretty well every year he was there. It's a good addition. It's a much needed addition. I think the big thing is, like you've already mentioned, Boots transferring off the team. It hurts because he's kind of the one player we don't have right now. One archetype we're missing is that kind of guy that can go out in the paint and slug it out and come out with a layup or, a contested shot that can go in. When I think of players like that, I think of Julius Hodge for NC State, a guy that it was almost like street ball when he was in, because he wasn't much of a shooter, but the guy could literally go to the paint, get fouled, and get you a bucket just about every time. And right now, I think that's going to be the important piece to identify is where's our guy that when the clock is winding down to, 0-0, who where's the ball? We're going to need somebody that's going to be able to penetrate. And I'm not saying we don't have it. I think that's just going to be somebody we're going to have to identify, and sure, there's potential in the team. That guy's probably already on the roster. But that's who I'm looking for, because I think at times when you needed a bucket last year and that clock was winding down, I know I would have wanted in Boots' hands, just because what he can do going to the dish.
I would think Luma and Mutz would be the guys that you would expect to be able to go in, drive to the basket, be able to score.
Yeah,
I mean,
Mutz, I think, Luma, I think he can give you that too.
Luma's more finesse,
he's
less
more
power.
of a finesse guy. But yeah,
But he
Mutz,
can
I
create
think
the
Mutz
shot
could be
inside.
that guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we'll see who it ends up being, but I think identifying that person is going to be important, and we'll see early on at least who they try to get penetrating and scoring some easy buckets. So we'll see.
So I mean, I think you're starting 5, Tim. It's Murphy, Aline, Couture, Mutz, Luma to start the season.
Yep.
No particular order there as far as position goes, but that's kind of what I would suspect. I'm sure you'll see it kind of mixed up as the season wears on, or injuries or whatever the team has to deal with. But, ACC wise, this team was picked to finish fifth. We talked about them being overlooked. The ACC isn't what it was. I mean, it's not this elite basketball conference anymore. It can definitely get back to that, but Duke and North Carolina have not been what they have been. And you've got Duke; they're the highest ranked ACC team at number 9. This is Coach K's last season. Everyone is drooling over this Paolo Branchero kid, who he's going to be another one and done for the Blue Devils. So We'll see how that works out. I kind of look back to the year Virginia Tech played Duke in the Sweet 16 with Zion Williamson and what's the kid on the Knicks now? The power forward. The 2 to Zion at Duke. You know what I'm talking about. He went like number 2 in the draft, I think, or number 3. Can't remember his name.
Justice Winslow.
No, not Justice Winslow.
Just throwing out a Duke name there.
Yeah, he plays on the Knicks. I see his face. I can't remember his name right now. And you had guys like, I am blanking on this entire team. The kid who was drafted by the Bulls. But anyways, that team was supposed to win the national championship. You had Zion Williamson, who, he's this like unbelievable talent. He's going to be like the next LeBron James. At least that's what he was being touted up to be. And then, they get to the Elite Eight. They almost lose in the Sweet 16 to Tech in overtime. And that's really kind of what Duke has been. I mean, they won the national championship in 2015. They really haven't done much since. They've gotten to a couple of Elite Eights. They haven't been to the Final Four since 15. They haven't won the ACC outright since 2006.
Wow.
And the last time they won the ACC tournament was 2010. So Duke is Duke. I mean, they're going to be solid this year. I expect them to make the tournament, something they couldn't do last season. Then you look at UNC, Roy Williams is retired. Insert Hubert Davis. Me personally, I'm not on the Hubert Davis wagon. I think I give him a year and a half before he's probably, escorted off the premises to Chapel Hill. And nothing against Hubert, just doesn't strike me as the guy.
You don't want to be the guy that follows up the legend. That's a tough one for anybody.
Yeah, it was a weird hire to me. It was just a weird hire. But it is what it is. So we'll see what happens. And I mean, UNC is a team that's very similar to what they were last year. So they're a team that got much better as the season went on, I felt like. But they were a team that really struggled with foul troubles. They seemed to be undisciplined at times. And they just didn't seem to have like the one dude that a lot of these like top tier basketball programs have. So remains to be seen what UNC will be. They're going to be a tough out. Florida State to me is the best team in the ACC.
Yep.
I don't know why we can't give Florida State respect. They were picked to finish 3rd, I think, in the ACC, behind Duke and North Carolina, of course, because Duke and North Carolina are called Duke and North Carolina.
That's right.
But what Leonard Hamilton has built there is pretty impressive, and he's always got experience. He's always got size. He's always got super physical players. Really, what Florida State has struggled to do is get through the tournament. They just seem to really kind of shy away from that moment for whatever reason, or come up short. And they've really been the highest seeded ACC team the last couple of seasons. So we'll see what Florida State can do. But, as far as my top 5 finish, Tim, I've got Florida State. I threw Duke in there at 2. I've got Virginia Tech 3. I've got UNC 4, and I've got UVA 5. I think UVA, they've lost quite a bit. I don't know if they've got any like dudes on that team. I mean, they're going to be solid. They're going to be tough to play against. It's a Tony Bennett coach basketball team. They're going to be able to beat anybody. But they don't really scare me this year. So
no, I mean, they don't scare you, but UVA, the system and the coaching is so good in Charlottesville.
it can beat anybody.
Yeah, it's so much less about dudes in Charlottesville than any other team. So I feel very confident 5 or 6 is where you're going to see the Cavaliers. And I'm with you on, they don't have the dudes thing, but they run a system and they have a team dedicated to that style of play in a way that pretty much no one else in the conference does. And you just see Tony Bennett, he gets the most out of whatever he's got because of that. And so I'm not betting against the Who's at all.
What do you got? What's your top 5?
I mean, it would be somewhat similar to yours. I don't really see anybody else sneaking in there. I think UNC, maybe I'd have them in UVA flip-flopped. We agree on FSU. I think FSU, what it makes FSU special is they're so balanced every year. They never have a hole, right? Like other teams, sometimes they're tall, they're athletic, but maybe they can't shoot. Or they can shoot the eyes out, but they're not tall or athletic, or any combination of said 3 pieces. FSU always has height, always. I mean, they're never short in the height front. They always have great athletes on the perimeter and the interior. It's not one of those teams where they got 1 or 2 good athletes. They've got a bunch of great athletes. And even more important than all that, they always got at least one guy that can shoot the eyes out on that basketball team. And I'm talking about impressive shooting when you think back to Bacon and what he did. And they've always got one guy like that. That's just an absolute stud. And so I expect FSU to continue to be the same balanced basketball team. And yeah, Leonard Hamilton, man, I mean, the guy doesn't get the love he deserves, I think, nationally. I mean, people should be talking about him more than they do. But FSU, they just, man, if you told me 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we'd be talking about FSU like this, I wouldn't have believed it. But here we are.
And then compared to where they're at compared to their football team.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, the Seminoles would love for those 2 programs to switch places, but you couldn't talk about 2 more dissimilar trajectories. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. No, so, I mean, it's going to be a fun season. You got to, for those on YouTube, you got to get your popcorn ready.
That's right. I got a box somewhere.
Can't wait to see Mike Young go out there and do his thing, and just wait to see what he says in these press conferences and post-game interviews, and just kind of enjoy all that. But let's jump over to football, Tim. And of course, that let's to finish it off. Like, I think Virginia Tech can easily make the tournament this year. They should make the tournament. The expectation is to make the tournament. I'd say Sweet 16 is I don't want to say expected, but if you want to put some expectations on the program, I'd say Sweet 16 and then see where you can go from there, basically. But
yeah,
this is definitely a Sweet 16 caliber basketball program if guys stay healthy and they're not dealing with some unforeseen circumstances. So it'll be fun.
Agreed.
Hopefully they can get back there, and we'll see where it goes.
I'm excited, man. College basketball is special. It always rolls around at the right time, and unfortunately, this distraction, and I say unfortunately, it was the same way last year. It's good to have them back, and again, watch ESPN, man. It's the way to go. I don't know if I can quad box it on the Apple TV, but I'm going to try.
Yeah, you probably can. I don't know. I haven't tried that before.
They're the only streaming device with the quad box, but I don't really know.
I didn't even know they had that capability. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to look at that. So let's jump into football. I don't want to talk a lot about Syracuse because it's just gonna upset me.
Let's not.
Are you an Office fan,
Tim? Final score in post here. What's that?
What was the final score? I don't even have it written down. That's how mad I was.
I've purged it from my mind.
41-36 or something.
Roughly.
Yeah, I know how it ended. Do you watch The Office?
Mm-hmm.
Or have you seen The Office?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So remember Andy and Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Andy gets promoted to regional manager after Michael Scott leaves, and there's this Will Ferrell character that runs through, and the James Bond guy, whatever his name is. He's
Idris
in
Elba.
Yeah. And he becomes regional manager of a paper sales company, never made a sale. Literally could not make a sale, but here he is in this leadership sales position. You've got Ryan, who somehow still hanging around, who's this like fraud, criminal, bum.
Right.
But they're there. They always find a way into the building. And honestly, after watching that game, I just felt like our entire staff was made up of Andy and Ryan's.
You could make that case.
And I think what was most frustrating about that game was Syracuse's defense was not playing to the level that they had traditionally played, right? And
That's
then
accurate.
Offensively, you got a guy like Malachi Thomas step up. He emerges. He's making some big plays. And so finally your offense was doing enough to win the game, which is really all we've been asking from this offense all year. To just keep us in the football game. And then on the flip side, the defense absolutely wets the bed.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty on the defensive side of the football, that's for sure.
And you've got a guy like Garrett Schrader, who, from a passing standpoint, probably one of the worst passers in the ACC, maybe in Power 5 quarterbacks, to be honest. And he's out there lighting you up. That to me was just the most infuriating part about that football game. It wasn't that Sean Tucker was having success and that he was pleased with his performance. It wasn't that Garrett Schrader could move the ball on the ground. We kind of expected that to happen. It was the success they found through the air. And, the last play of the game, like you look at the photo, Dorian Strong was right there. So I can't even say it was bad defense. I mean, he was right there. You look at his arm. I mean, it's a game of inches, right? And it went against Virginia Tech. But it's just everything that kind of led up to that point. It was just kind of like the icing on the cake. And for me, it cemented the future of the staff.
Yeah, I agree.
And whether, however that shapes up. And I wasn't expecting Witt to come out and make an announcement and fire Fuente on Monday, because that's just not how Witt operates. Like, he just doesn't do that. I stay off message boards. I signed up for a 247 subscription last year, 2 years ago, just to kind of see what was going on. It reaffirmed my hate for message boards because everybody knows something.
Right.
So I don't anything I see on a message board, I just assume it's, fraudulent.
You just sound like you're mad because you don't have any sources, man.
Yeah. I don't have any sources.
That's insider envy, baby.
Yeah.
I know a guy.
That's what they say.
Hell,
I know a guy
guys.
who knows this guy who knows this GA on the staff of Georgia Tech, who knows the GA at Virginia Tech. And he said, that's my source.
That's a legitimate source. I mean, I don't know why you're downplaying
but that's all it is.
Go on.
And so, it is what it is. For whatever reason, this team can't win at home. Or I should say, really, a Fuente coach team can't win at Lane Stadium consistently, which I've never been able to understand. But then you move away from that game, Tim, you go into Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
They looked better.
Definitely better. I still have issues.
For 3 quarters, they looked decent. The third quarter, they looked really bad.
Yeah, 2.5, I think.
I think I don't know if it was poor Georgia Tech defense, where guys were running wide open, but what I think part of it was Virginia Tech has found a running game.
Yeah, that's the key.
With Malachi Thomas, he carried the ball 25 times. That's the most a running back has ever carried a football under Justin Fuente.
Yep.
At Virginia Tech, and he had 103 yards, and Blackshear added 14 carries for 183. So the team had a total of 237 rushing yards. And what happened? There were a ton of plays that opened up down the field. Guys
Funny how that
open.
works.
It's either, I don't know if they were schemed open at times. I don't know if it was just blown coverage. I don't know if the receivers made a good play. It is what it is, but there were a ton of guys running wide open. Trey Turner most noticeably. You know, he had 2 plays over 60 yards. It was the first 2 plays of the year Virginia Tech had of 50 yards or more. So that just shows you how bad this offense has been.
We're eating over here, baby.
It's game 8, week 9. And you don't have a single play over 50 yards? Can you play in the ACC?
Can you play in the year 2021?
Hard to really kind of fathom, but the team had a season high in yards at 491. They had 329 of those yards at halftime. But what really kind of stood out to me, Tim, wasn't the end result. And I didn't watch this game live. I had my daughter's 4-year-old birthday party.
Priorities.
So I went back and watched it. And I already knew they won. And so I'm watching it. And at the end of the game, I'm like, how did they only win this game by 9 points? Like, it felt like they won that game by 3 touchdowns. That's what it felt like to me at the end of the game. But they only won it by 9 points.
Yeah.
And it was really that third quarter, early fourth quarter that really could have flipped the game the other way. After that big Jahmyr Gibbs run for 60, 70 yards, whatever it was. And then the Virginia Tech defense coming up with the 4th and 1 stop. Had that not happened, Virginia Tech easily could have lost that game, a game in which they just could not put away. It felt like they had so many opportunities to just put it away. And they just couldn't do it. They couldn't get in the end zone. So that was kind of my biggest takeaway. I mean, great to win. It's always great to win. Get back to 4-4, 500, stop the bleeding, gives you a little bit of momentum. Still got a shot at a bowl, which really pains me to say that. We're going into game 9 of the season and we have a shot at a bowl. But that's the reality of Virginia Tech football right now.
We got a streak to restart.
It's Georgia Tech is not a good football team. They're a young team. They're a developing team. I think Jeff Collins has them moving in the right direction, but just watching that game, I left it and I was like, you know what? This team, they won. Great. They should have won by a lot more points. And you play a better opponent, you lose the game, which is what we saw the previous 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on it. It's interesting. You see a lot of the stuff we've been screaming for, a lot of fans have been screaming for, which is use your 11 running backs properly.
17.
Please establish the run at some point in the season. And finally, our prayers were answered largely because of the game Malachi had last week against Syracuse. I think the staff finally felt comfortable establishing the run. Although, I would argue, regardless of Malachi's game last week, they should have been working harder to establish the run in the previous games because of the pressure on Braxton. And, it's the elementary aspect to that really drives me nuts, is that we shouldn't be this far into the season realizing this or making these changes. I mean, this should be something that's addressed within one game, yet here we are. And we have to be, we have to act surprised when we see Braxton, who struggles with throwing the football, who all year we've kind of just ignored our stable of running backs. And to finally see success offensively in a rough offensive season when we finally use the running backs. And here's the thing about the success that Braxton did have. The throws weren't good. They didn't need to be good.
He made a lot of throws that had a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah,
could have
but
easily hit some guys in stride. And there were a couple good throws in there.
there were
But for the most part, you're
They're
throwing
not
to
all
wide
bad.
open guys, and he can't hit them consistently.
Right. But my only thing there is, if you want to get your guys more wide open, and we've had wide receivers that have struggled with separation all year, heck, not all year, multiple years, help the guys out. Establish your run game. It couldn't hurt. And, I liked what I saw from some of the play calling. I think we were making good strides. To see Braxton have success, regardless of when you look down at the microcosm of the individual throws themselves and critique them, what you could do and you probably should do, and that's fine. The bigger issue to me is something we still haven't solved at this point, which is halftime adjustments kick our ass every single time. We went in. I think Braxton went in, what was it, 200 yards at half? And maybe he ended with 251 or something like that.
Yep.
I mean, and it's not like the game was out of reach. It was a 1-score ball game in the fourth quarter, and it shouldn't have been. And that frustrates me, because these are issues that I see ahead of time where, Georgia Tech's not a good football game or a good football team, and we shouldn't be having these issues against Georgia Tech. I mean, to have the offense the country came out on that one, stagnate to that extreme is concerning. And it wouldn't be as concerning if we hadn't seen this rerun every other game for the past 3 years. And, that's what frustrates me. You come out like a house on fire, and come halftime, the opposing defensive coordinator at least figures out how to manage the game somewhat. And we have no counterpunch. I want to establish that counterpunch. I want to be the team that doesn't need the counterpunch. We don't have that killer ability to step on someone's throat and keep it there throughout an entire game. And in year six, against the Bees, that's when you should be able to squash them. And we haven't been able to do that. And it's very frustrating.
Well, I mean, it was just more horrible play in the red zone. I mean,
of course,
they stalled on 3 separate red zone possessions.
Yeah.
And they were able to get some field goals out of that, but it's like, how many more weeks is it going to take to figure out these red zone issues?
I don't know.
Which to me, it's just not going to be figured out.
No.
They can't execute in the red zone. So I don't really know what the deal is there, but it's just, it goes back to this team. And what's so frustrating about this football team is there's talent on this football team.
100%.
Whether or not Braxton is an elite passer or not, we know he's not, right? But athletically, he should be able to do enough to keep you in games. The way that Virginia Tech's been using him hasn't been ideal, right? No. And you look at their record, and they're 4-4. And they've literally lost 3 games because of coaching.
Yeah. And
then they almost lost this one because, again, they can't get it done in the red zone. And, I mean, to me, it kind of, the Syracuse game, like I said, sealed the fate. I don't know if you saw this, but the one thing that I found interesting was there was a photo of Witt and Fuente at the end of the game, and Fuente just looked like, a 500-pound gorilla had come off his bed. It looked like he had just won the freaking ACC.
I saw that picture. I also saw a million reactions
which
to
just
that picture.
Just giving him this big hug. And so, I'm not looking at it negatively or positively, but it either stood out to me one of 2 things. One, they've already had a combo. I don't think Fuente's told the team, okay? Because if you tell the team, it gets out. There's no way you can tell a team full of 18 to 22-year-olds and that stays in-house.
You wouldn't do that.
No, it just doesn't happen. Witt keeps everything very close to the vest. So does Fuente. And, it was just more of a, Witt felt good for him. He's obviously not rooting against Fuente. There's no reason for him to. But at the same time, it's like, what if Fuente reels off a few wins here? And it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I
What are we
mean,
doing here? Is the Witt Fuente relationship like the Fuente Corn relationship? That's kind of like what I looked at that as again, I'm probably just looking into it too much, but those two looked very happy for one another. And at the end of the day, like I said, like you said, Virginia Tech had to win the Coastal this year.
yeah,
Pitt just lost to Miami. Anybody in the Coastal can lose, and they had to win it this year because it was their best shot to win an ACC title, and they couldn't get it done, and they're not going to get it done. They could still get it done. It's not going to happen. But getting to that bowl game would be important for the program, being some kind of interim situation, most likely. But I just saw that and I was like, I don't know. Just it put a little bit of doubt in my mind.
Rightfully so. I mean, I think that's a natural reaction. My issue with it more was, why are we hugging like that after beating Georgia Tech?
It looked like a reaction to winning the ACC championship.
Right. So it's Georgia Tech, guys. I mean, first of all, calm down.
They lost to Northern Illinois this year.
Pump the brakes. We don't need to celebrate like that after beating Georgia Tech. I mean, you could have gone with like the calm, maybe a little handshake into a one-armed hug type situation. I mean, that would have been acceptable. I'm not going to be the handshake police or the emphatic hug police. That's not my role.
Can you imagine Nick Saban smiling like that after beating that Georgia Tech football team 26-17?
He would be so mad he wouldn't be able to think straight. I mean,
he would literally look like his head was about to burst on the sideline.
Amen. He would. I mean, he would have a little vein popping right here.
He'd look like Max Scherzer getting ready to go out on the mound.
That's horrifying.
Like, just out of his mind, insane. That's how he would be responding.
I wouldn't want to sit next to Max Scherzer during the ball game, man. He's way too amped.
But I mean, that's just kind of, I don't know. It's just a weird vibe in Blacksburg right now. But I think going forward, the good news is you've only got one more game at home, which seems to be a positive for this football team and this coaching staff. Not sure why, but they don't win at home. That game also happens to be against Duke.
Great.
And I swear if they lose to Duke.
Coach Cuddy.
Malachi Thomas, they have seemed to have found a back from a pretty run-of-the-mill 3-star grade true freshman coming in. First freshman running back with back-to-back 100-yard games since Kevin Jones.
That is what they call a good omen.
Was, with this new rushing attack, it should open up the offense. You're going up against the Boston College team this week that really struggles to stop the run. So that's positive. You play in the ACC, so you've always got a chance.
Yeah.
John Parker Romo seems to have found his stride kicking. He's looked much better.
That's huge. Congratulations to John Parker Romo. That can't be easy from a mental aspect to come back after such a poor start. So props to him. Shout out to Trey Turner. While we're giving out props to people, I don't know that I've had a favorite Hokie in the last 10 years. He's a top 5 Hokie of all time for me. Trey's been dealt some tough cards, I think, in regards to his ability to maximize his talent. Things certainly haven't been easy. And for a guy that could have called it quits and transferred many times, to be able to see him play so well on a week in, week out basis is just a treat for us in a season that is bleak otherwise. Shout out to Trey, because, man, that kid's a highlight reel. I mean, you go back to that back of the end zone catch he had earlier this year, somehow getting one foot down before he flew out of bounds. Some of the stuff he's done is just eye-popping. And I don't think he gets the credit he deserves nationally. And a lot of the lack of credit nationally stems from variables that are outside of his control. So I just wanted to shout that out. Trey Turner, you're the man. Keep doing what you do. We love you.
Top 5 all time is a bold statement, but I will say
I'm
for
talking
Trey,
top 5 favorite for me. Top 5 favorite. Yeah. I'm not getting into the top 5 best Virginia Tech football player.
I know. It's still a bold statement to me, but
I value loyalty.
I mean, if you look at his numbers this year and with how poor Virginia Tech has been through the air, I mean, he's had a pretty impressive season. So
that's what I mean.
He has been one of the few bright spots on offense. So, I mean, he's had his ups and downs this year, but for the most part, it's been ups. So it has been good to see him kind of come through it. Some of the bad news, Miami, it looks like they're hitting their stride. Tyler Van Dyke seems to have found his. You don't think so?
Counterpoint. Is it bad news if Manny Diaz is retained because of this?
No, I mean, I was thinking about that because I think, how long has Manny Diaz been there now?
3 years.
This is year 3.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it, it's college football, right? So you look at the first recruiting class he gets isn't a full recruiting class. And so essentially you've got a bunch of either sophomores, maybe a junior, really with the COVID year, sophomores, freshmen, true freshmen on that team. And I was thinking about Tyler Van Dyke, who I believe is a true freshman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that to me is an endorsement for the type of guy that Diaz can bring in. And what Diaz has done well is pull guys out of the portal. And so you mix that in with recruiting and being able to find these kids. I mean, that's been kind of the issue with Florida State, right? Not to say like Willie Taggart, they should have stuck with him or anything, but they've got these fast triggers on these coaches. You give a coach 3 years. Well, you just wasted 3 years. You dump the water out into the ocean because what you've done is you've taken 3 years of that coach's recruiting for his system. You've brought those kids in who are barely acclimated to the program. For the most part, freshmen and sophomores aren't contributing at a high level to a program of a mature Miami program. And so really, if you want to really see it through, give the guy at a minimum 4 years, ideally 5. Now, not all things being equal, you can be able to kind of see the writing on the wall. But what I'm saying is in Diaz's case is they've struggled to find a quarterback. They brought in D'Eriq King last year. They went, 9-3?
Yeah.
And then D'Eriq King wasn't right all season. And then they had to go to a true freshman quarterback who, outside of Central Connecticut State, struggled for a couple of weeks, was making some true freshman mistakes. And now all of a sudden they're winning games. He's catching his stride. So I don't know if it's like, if I'm Miami, I'd give Diaz 1 more year. But assuming that they finish out the year
they're working their way into that, right? And I think with Diaz finishing strong is going to be key. There's been a lot of, I don't want to say culture issues because I hate to throw everything under that umbrella, but something about that locker room hasn't seemed right. At least when you look into last season, there's just been some issues that make you think
it takes time to get that out.
It does. But if you see another issue where that something's just not feeling right, I don't know, man. I mean, because the counterpoint to your argument with the 3-year thing is if you know the red flags, and these guys in the AD know more of the red flags than we do from the outside looking in. If you see some of those red flags at 3 years, depending on the environment, depending on what the contract situation is, looking at recruiting classes, there's a whole bunch of variables you want to look at. But sometimes it is right to pull the plug after 3 years, and I know ideally
sometimes it is.
Sometimes you want to get ahead of that because then you run into the scenario where you can hang on too long. And there may be some things that are just non-negotiables that happens to a coach. And the next thing happens, recruiting starts to decline. The next thing happens, fan interest starts to decline. The next thing happens, donations start to dry up. And you're left 6 years down the road and you're holding a bag.
You're 10-0 at Miami, nobody comes to the games anyways.
Well, I mean, that's true. And I wasn't talking just about Virginia Tech, even though I was using that year 6 as an example. But I mean, this is any program I'm talking about here. You can do damage to your brand. You can do damage to your fan base, your donor base, all that stuff that can take time to rebuild. So at some point, it is time to pull the plug, strike while the iron's hot, while the fan
Oh
base
yeah.
is still into it at a normal school. Miami's fan base is never into it.
I mean, you can usually tell, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
It should
and
be.
I mean,
It should be.
Diaz is not an X's and O's guy.
No.
Okay. He's not there for his coaching.
No.
Okay.
I hope not.
He's a recruiter. Okay.
He's Mr. 305.
Yeah, he's Mr. 305. He's a guy who can walk in and sell you on the program. And I mean, that's what you need sometimes as a college coach. That's what Urban Meyer is.
Hey,
that's
Justin
very clear
Fuente
now.
could use a little more pomade.
Yeah. And
Slip it back.
I guess Fuente's not an X's and goes guy either because he's not calling any plays. But that's kind of what I mean. It's like, you know what Manny Diaz is. Okay, he's not a great X's and O's guy, even though he's calling the defense this year. Defense has sucked.
I mean, I want to say he's a passable X's and O's guy because of what he's done in his career as a defensive coordinator. But even I'm starting to not be able to say that with a straight face. So go on.
I mean, what's the difference? And I'm being real here. What's the difference between Manny Diaz at Texas as their defensive coordinator and Tony Elliott at Clemson as their offensive coordinator?
The shades of orange.
He had a couple of years of success, then had a really bad year. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, like, you know, I think if these guys were great football coaches, look at Alabama. These Alabama assistants leave every single year, and they don't do jack when they leave. They suck. And I mean, you watch it happen year after year after year. Then they all come back to Alabama. They all go back and they're like a interim, intern, whatever the hell Nick Saban job title gives them. As like oh yeah, I'll let you back in, but you're in the doghouse for thinking that you could go to Tennessee and coach, you know, or whatever. But seriously, like question. You've got so much talent at these programs. You're cherry picking talent. That you're choosing the talent. The talent's not choosing you, right?
Yeah.
You're turning talent away. And then when things get a little difficult, you can't execute.
Right.
You have one of the worst offenses in the ACC. To me, Tony Elliott's stock it has plummeted.
No
I
doubt.
have zero interest in Tony Elliott as a head coach right now. And I'm not saying he can't rebound, but I'm just saying, you know, you look at all these Alabama assistants, you look at these guys that have just eons and eons of talent. And it's about the player a lot more in college football than it is about the coach. Not always, but a lot of times it is. Especially when you have 5-star after 5-star after 5-star lined up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, how many good coaches have sprung off the Bill Belichick coaching tree?
I mean McDaniels is too afraid to go back out on his own.
Well, I would be too if I were him. After what happened at Denver.
Literally accepted the role for the Colts head coaching job and said, "No, I'm going to go back and be Bill's offensive coordinator."
Yeah. Well, part of me wonders if the way Saban and Belichick and those guys run the program, if assistants are guided in such a way that it stunts their growth or their ability to really understand what it takes to succeed as a head coach, and whether it has something to do with the way, you know, they run their particular assistant coaches and the freedom they give them. I don't know.
I think this is part of the deal, right?
Yeah.
You're an offensive coordinator at Alabama. Your name's Jeremy Pruitt, for example. Okay. You can't go to Tennessee and be Nick Saban.
No.
Because you're not Nick Saban.
No.
So guys aren't going to put up with that from Jeremy Pruitt. they'll put up with that from Nick Saban because Nick Saban is a god in that room, on that campus. He is Alabama
in that
football.
state. I mean, in that state.
Same thing with Belichick. And I mean, you're going to put up with something from a Bill Belichick or a Nick Saban that you're not going to put up with from a Bill O'Brien or a Jeremy Pruitt.
Bill O'Brien.
And it's just, I think that's part of the challenge, right? Because
I think you're right.
Look at Matt Patricia in Detroit. He tried to be Bill Belichick. Matt, you haven't built that. You don't have that credibility to go in and command respect like Bill Belichick. You have done nothing other than ride on Belichick's coattails.
Although I will say it's a shame Patricia didn't work out because I love the way he wore the pen in his hat. I do that when I wear a hat sometimes. Like when I was. And I mean,
it's unfair to blame anybody for failing in Detroit. So
true, lines are cursed. We all know that. So I don't know how we got down that tangent, but that was good.
Yeah, I just realized we haven't even previewed Boston College yet, so we should get a move on.
Pick it up.
I'll fly through the ACC Week 9 recap here. So Miami beats Pitt 38-34. Whole lot of passing yards. 519 for Pickett, 3 scores, 2 INTs. Both were pretty detrimental to Pitt's success. Van Dyke, once again, 426, 3 touchdowns. And like I said, Miami, all of a sudden a team. They've got wins over NC State and Pitt. That's probably 2 of the top 3 teams in the conference right now. Yeah. And things are looking up for the old Hurricanes. You had Florida State. I hope nobody had Florida State covering because that was the biggest backdoor cover I have ever seen. With the meaningless fumble return for a touchdown at the end of the game that gave Clemson the 10-point win instead of a 4-point win. And just another one of those games where you're watching Clemson, you're just waiting. You're like, okay, guys, today's the day. Today's the day you're going to do something, and nothing really happened. So unfortunate for them, 4 for 14 on third down, but they get the win. They're still 7-1. Aren't they? Remember they lost twice.
On there.
I can't remember. But yeah, just not very good. No, they've lost twice at least. Boston College at Syracuse 3 times. Boston College at Syracuse. Syracuse gets the 21-6 win. This was really the kind of game I expected from Syracuse and Virginia Tech, to be honest, but got it about a week later. Not a whole lot going on for Boston College these days.
No.
Patrick Garwo has been okay at running back, but the quarterback position is really holding this team back. 293 yards on the ground. Sean Tucker, surely pleased with his performance, running over for over 200 yards. Syracuse outscored Boston College 21-3 in the third quarter.
We on the Carter Heisman hype train yet?
What's that?
We on the Carter Heisman hype train yet?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I figured so. I think we are. Wake Forest 45, Duke 7. No surprise there. Wake really good, Duke really bad, and that's kind of what happens. First time in school history, the Demon Deacons have started 8-0. We didn't talk about it last week because we didn't have a show, but Wake put up 70 against Army. Should be a fun game this week against North Carolina.
And I think they cracked the top 10 this week, which is they did. I don't know if that's ever happened. So
I don't think it has. Number 9 in the country, I believe. So
yeah, big deal.
Notre Dame 44, UNC 34. Tar Heels now 4-4. They captured the lead in the third quarter. They quickly squandered it, never recovered. Kyron Williams had a 91-yard touchdown run, 199 on the ground. UNC just not very good on defense. That's really all there is to it. And their offense is not what it was last year. So they're really struggling to really kind of stay in these games. So the disappointing season continues for Carolina. NC State squeaks by Louisville 28-13. Big, what was it? Big fourth quarter, Tim. Mm-hmm. I think Devin Leary had 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
What's going on with their running game? I mean, their running game has been struggling of late. Bam Knight was
Ever
the leading rusher
since
at 23 yards.
Chandler Zavala went down, which was their second best offensive lineman, I would gather. Left guard plays next to Ike Ekwonu. And it hasn't seemed the same since he went down. NC State continues to deal with those consistency issues I mentioned on, 2 podcasts ago now, where, they're kind of struggling for offensive consistency. They figured it out at the end. I think they had 3 drives at the end of the game that were long and exactly what you wanted to see for the prior 3 quarters. But the defense still continues to play admirably, losing 3 of their best starters to this point. Cyrus Fagan, Peyton Wilson all going down, CJ Clark on the interior. They're bouncing back. I think Greg Thomas is filling in extremely well for Isaiah Moore, who was the leader of that defense, starting middle linebacker. Drake has been everywhere. And he's one of those players that just seems to have it when it comes to being around the football. But the bigger thing to me is, Tim Beck looked conservative the entire game. Opened it up towards the end of the game. What do you know? They score points. The bigger deal to me here is that Devin Leary continues to play pretty good football quietly. He's up to 21 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions on the year. And I think, if it wasn't for Kenny Pickett, we'd probably be talking about Devin Leary being the best quarterback in the ACC. And, those are the breaks. But as of right now, 21-2. Some of the throws he made in the game against Louisville were absolute NFL throws. And NC State just needs to figure out how to leverage that arm more. And they'll get out of this offensive inconsistency issue they're having.
Last game of the week, which was like at 10 p.m. Eastern time, which I don't know how Virginia got screwed with that, but
Utah
on the road at number 25 BYU, 115 combined points. 66-49, BYU gets the W. UVA actually had the lead 42-38 at halftime. Then in the second half, 3 and out. Then they had a 9-play, 80-yard touchdown drive, a 1-play fumble, an interception on the next drive, turnover on downs. And meanwhile, BYU scored 4 touchdowns on 6 possessions, one of which was to run out the clock at the end of the game. So that's kind of the deal with UVA, right? Is they've got the high-powered offense, but their defense cannot slow teams down. Now, you've got a team like Virginia Tech that can't move the football. I'm sure they could come up with a stop or two, but when you got an offense like a BYU, it's a different story. So still a big day for Armstrong. The thing to watch there, left the game in the 4th with a broken rib, so that's something to monitor going forward to see kind of how he deals with that. But that's it for week 9 in the ACC, Tim. Let's jump over to the Boston College preview. So a little Friday Night Lights ACC action in Chestnut Hill. So 4-4 Hokies, 4-4 Boston College Eagles. I've really, I've given Boston College the benefit of the doubt for too long. Similar to how you keep buying Clemson.
Yes. Very similar.
I'm gonna put the Boston College bottle down. I can't do it anymore. Yeah. Since Dracovic went down with an injury, they've been kind of a disaster. They've got 4 straight ACC losses. They're only averaging 10 points per game in those conference matchups. Dennis Grosel has been
gross.
Well, kind of gross, to be honest. 6 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on the year. Really the only bright spot on the offense has been Zay Flowers, who feels kind of like the modern day version of Calvin Johnson, meaning great talent at receiver, but nobody to throw him the football. And you got like a Patrick Quarko who leads the team in rushing, does okay behind an offensive line that's been good, struggling at times, but there's just no threat throwing the football. And, this is a matchup that is actually favorable for Virginia Tech, in my opinion. Yeah. They don't have a big threat at running back. They've got an unstable passing game, and they've got a defense that you can take advantage of on the ground, which is how Virginia Tech can win games. At least that's how they've put up yards in the last 2 weeks. From what we've seen out of the Virginia Tech rushing game in the last 2 weeks, even though they're 1-1 in that span, they found a running game. So some of my keys to the game, Tim, you beat Boston College by running the football. And so, Sean Tucker ran for 200 yards last week. Louisville ran for 337 yards on 47 attempts. They won by 2 touchdowns. Clemson had 231 yards on 40 attempts. Those are 3 of the 4 losses they had in the ACC. NC State's the only team that didn't put up a big rushing number, had 130 yards, but then Devin Leary had 251 and 3 touchdowns through the air. So I'd be expecting a heavy dose of Malachi Thomas and Raheem Blackshear. If the Hokies can't get the ground game going, which based off of what we've seen in the last 2 weeks, I'd be a little surprised. It may be a little tougher, but I mean, what are your thoughts on that one?
I mean, you're absolutely spot on. I think we've got kind of the template of how to play against Boston College right now. When you see the previous tailbacks and how effective they've been right now, the 1-2 punch of Malachi and Raheem, it's perfect. Even though they're not quite thunder and lightning, they are 2 different backs, and I think they play well nicely off of each other, especially when it comes to being able to run Raheem out on 3rd downs for his receiving abilities. And kind of work him in more creative ways into the offense. But I mean, the big key here is to just maintain that consistency with the running game and to not abandon it if it doesn't work the first 2 or 3 handoffs, because we've seen too much from this staff that the game plan changes from week to week, seemingly with no reasoning behind it. And this isn't a game where I want to see us have sub 10 carries each for Thomas and Blackshear. We need to do exactly what we did against Georgia Tech, because that's the recipe to beat this team. And, this is a game where in theory you shouldn't have to pass a whole lot. But if you take advantage of the soft run defense, you're going to have options for Burmeister to hit, especially if you work in some play action effectively down the field. And you just got to make it easy on Braxton. And how do we do that? We continue to lean into the run game, especially when we have advantages in there going in. And I don't care if this was a game against a team that didn't have the same issues that Boston College has defending the run. I want to see us attempt to establish the run in every game we play from here until the end of the season.
The next key I've got is be opportunistic through the air. So, by the numbers, Boston College has the ACC's top defense. They're giving up 120 yards per game. They've got 8 interceptions forced, only allowed 7 touchdowns. I think it's probably a little inflated for a couple reasons. One, you've got, a really porous run defense, so teams don't have to try and throw the ball on you. I'm not saying their passing defense is bad. I'm just saying, I don't go into there like shaking in my boots necessarily. Garrett Schrader had 48 yards through the air last week. Didn't try to throw the football really though. So, if you look at Devin Leary, like I said, he had 251. DJU went for 207. Malik Cunningham, not so good, 133. So it's been kind of up and down depending on who the quarterback's been. I wouldn't suspect that Braxton Burmeister is going to have any kind of great figure in here, but the key is to be opportunistic. So, what they saw last week against Georgia Tech was plays opening up down the field. There is murmurs that Trey Turner broke his sternum. Don't know if that's real or not, but it's out there if you look hard enough. So not sure if that is the case or not. But I'd imagine if it is the case, he is not going to be playing. Anybody who's had any kind of sternum pain, breaking your sternum is not going to be fun to deal with, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully that's fake news. So we'll see, but anything you want to add to that one, Tim?
No, I mean, I think you hit on it perfect, man. Like I said, I want to see us establish the run. I want to see us lean into it, but we're going to have to take our shots, and we just got to be smart about play design and smart about what throws to make and what throws not to make. So if we can do that, we shouldn't have too much trouble.
To
But
make
that
good
is,
throws when good opportunities present themselves.
yes, have those two marry, and we'll be doing good things. But having seen a bit of the Boston College pass defense, Leary certainly didn't have too much difficulty with them. Watched most of the defensive front. But you never know. Certainly with our quarterback situation, it's better to be safe than sorry.
There's no doubt. So my last key to the game here is Zay Flowers and not letting him beat you. BC has a good offensive line. So it will be challenging to get pressure on Grossell. I think the one guy that's the true X factor is Flowers. And if the Hokies hold him in check, I think they've got a really good chance to win. But, neither – Boston College played two quarterbacks last week. Neither one of them had over 100 yards passing, and Flowers had 6 catches for 116 yards.
That's incredible.
So he's a dynamic athlete. He can be the difference maker in a game like this. He's kind of like the Josh Downs of the UNC offense in week 1, to where you've got a bunch of question marks, but he's like the one guy who can break the game open. So that's somebody they're going to have to watch. But that was my last key game, my key for the game. Tim, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, we just kind of limit the big plays here. I don't see enough on the offense of football here, especially given the one-sided nature of the Boston College attack, to where we really need to be afraid of long, sustained drives. I just don't think the running game is as good as it should be for them to succeed, given that they're so one-sided. So stack the box, keep it tight. I'm not too afraid of our edge players outside of wanting to keep an eye on Zay. But keep them in front of you. Don't give up the big play. I mean, if Virginia Tech would be in hot water in this game, it would be because we got hit 2 or 3 times on some big plays and some busted coverages, because there's just not enough there to pose a consistent threat where you're going to have one of those 10-play drives that goes 72 yards and ends in a score 6 minutes off the clock. Not the kind of game I feel like we're going to see, only because they're designed to have those drives, given that they lean into the run, but they're so one-sided, it's extremely hard for them to have success doing so. And, as far as we go, this plays into our inability, at least we struggle with the run on the interior. But I think the lack of a true threat and a consistent passing game is going to make it much easier for us to supplement our weakness in this case. And so I'm hopeful we're looking at a win here that should be fairly comfortable. On paper, it certainly looks that way. But again, consistency has not necessarily been our calling card. And especially when it comes to a schematic standpoint, consistency has not been our calling card. I just hope that we don't overthink this and go with the obvious approach here, because I think there's a very heavily suggested way to dictate this game. And we do not need to turn this game into something it's not, which is, let's not try to showcase Braxton Burmeister here or do anything outside of, let's establish the run and let's play solid defense. And that should see us through.
So what's your prediction? The Hokies are a 2.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking the Hokies all day as a 2.5-point favorite. I mean, I've been off the Boston College bandwagon since Jerkovic went down. And it's only gotten worse since then, as far as what we've seen from Grossell continues to get worse and worse by the week. Now we're seeing 2 quarterbacks in Boston College really struggling to try and figure out how to get a passing game going. It feels like a really good matchup for us right now. I say, man, this feels really weird, but I say 2 touchdowns. This feels like a 28-14 type of game to me, 31-17, something like that.
Yeah, I've got Virginia Tech winning this as well, 23-18.
Sure.
So I think it'll be closer than maybe it should be, but that's kind of where I'm feeling this one. Let's jump to some of the other games. So we've got Wake Forest at North Carolina. This is an out-of-conference game, for the record.
Weird.
UNC is a 2.5-point favorite. Who you got?
Well, I understand it, given Wake Forest defense. They have not been sharp, to put it lightly. But Wake Forest,
North Carolina,
Wake Forest, correct.
8-0, 4-4.
You could say that repeatedly, and I will not get tired of it. Mac Brown is 4-4. Here's the deal: Wake Forest offense and the hype that is following that program right now. You're ranked in the top 10 for potentially the first time ever. We're going to need a fact check on that, but I think that's correct. You got North Carolina and a chance to continue this magical season. Mac Brown's not going to be the one to stop you. I'm not feeling it. You're going to have to give me Wake on that one. I feel like this may be something that I end up regretting, just with the way that UNC's offense can capitalize on weak defenses at times. But I'm going Wake in this one.
Yeah, I'm going Wake as well. It was I think it was last year they played, or maybe it was 2 years ago. An out-of-conference game that was fairly entertaining. I think it was 2 years ago because Sage Surratt was there and all that. It's going to be very high scoring. I'm probably going to take whatever the over is, but I like Wake to keep it going.
What would
Pitt
you
at
put
Duke.
the over under at, real quick? Take a stab.
What do I think it's going to be? What Vegas has it
I
as?
I know what it is. What would you think it is?
It's probably like 74.5.
Man, you got close to 76.5. So
yeah,
healthy over under there.
That's
healthy.
That's pretty high. That's pretty high. But I mean, if you've watched these two teams, literally Wake Forest, what was it, 70-55 against Army a couple weeks ago?
Insane.
So
you're giving up 50 to a triple option team, man. Whew.
That was having success through the air at times.
Paul Johnson was getting hot watching that one.
That was an interesting game to watch.
Yeah.
Pitt at Duke. Pitt is a 21.5-point favorite. Who you got?
This is a hard one. I'm tempted at the 21 points. Give me Pitt. Duke's an absolute train wreck. It's hard to understate how bad they are at this point. And, with Pitt's offense the way that it is, their defense will do enough. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay or disparage Duke too much here, but that's a rough Duke team. So I'll take Pitt.
They're an absolute dumpster fire. So, I'm definitely taking Pitt. I think this will probably be covered by the end of the first quarter, if I had to guess. Georgia Tech at Miami. Miami is a 10.5-point favorite.
This is one I could see getting wrong here. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Van Dyke. He started off poorly. He's making some really good throws right now. Miami is riding Mr. 305 to a potential coastal title here. I don't see Georgia Tech. I don't see the Bees getting in their way. I'm not impressed with some of what I've seen from Jeff Collins' in-game coaching as of late. I think he's got the program on the right track, as you said. I think he's still a few players away, but 10.5, I'm taking Miami all day. I expect them to win by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, this is an important game for Miami just because it's are you the Miami of old and this is the game you lose after what happened the last 2 weeks? Or are you going to actually take a step forward?
This would be the most Miami loss
Manny
of all
Diaz
time.
Comments and say fire him if they lose this game. It's Miami should win this game easily. 10.5 points. I'd say 4 weeks ago I wouldn't have taken Miami. I'd say after the last 2 weeks I've got to lean Miami here. NC State at Florida State. NC State is a 2.5-point favorite.
NC State. I talk about their inconsistencies all the time, but they keep finding ways to win. They've got 2 losses, one of them being to Miami in a game where Miami looked really good. And I think that's when we started to see the tide turn a little bit with Miami. And my opinion on Miami has changed a whole lot since then. What I'm seeing out of NC State here that really gives me hope. as far as the victory for the Wolfpack is. The defense, which shouldn't be playing as well as it is, just keeps having guys step up and play so well. With a Florida State offense that I don't think instills fear in anyone, or at least it shouldn't. I see this more as a matchup of a mediocre offense versus what I see as one of the better defenses in the ACC versus an offense that I think is pretty good on the NC State side versus a defense that's still kind of just mediocre. So all signs to me point for at least a touchdown win for the Wolfpack, maybe even 2.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State is playing better.
For sure. Definitely improved from where they were.
They're better than they were to start the season for sure. So, but I still think they're going to lose this game by more than 2.5 points. So NC State seems like the easy pick. There's a few of these where I'm like, these spreads are making me uneasy, but
yes,
NC State wins one more game. I get my $50 plus another 50 back for my preseason bet on there. 6.5 total wins.
Yep.
Trash line. So take advantage of that.
Line.
Clemson at Louisville. Clemson is a 3.5 point favorite. Who you got?
Louisville. Oh.
You finally go against Clemson.
They've burned me so much. I'm not.
I think this line
Clemson trap
is finally relative to where Clemson is at. Like, this is a realistic line now. Like, these lines have been 9, 10, 14 points. Like, Clemson can barely score 14 points.
It's a reflection of exactly what we've seen all year, which is they're finally starting to. I mean, their offense looks a little better. If they start leaning into Shipley in the way they were trying to lean into DJU,
a little.
I can see them breaking out, but I'm not picking it yet this week. I mean, I like Cunningham a lot on Louisville, even though he's very inconsistent. I think he's a hard quarterback to game plan for. I think Louisville has the athletes to match up a little bit with Clemson, because I think the easier games for Clemson are going to be against teams with not a lot of athletes. And while you're choking to death, I am just going to continue rolling here. I do like what I've seen from Shipley in that running game. So this does pain me a little bit to pick Louisville here, but I'm standing firm with Louisville. I'm not going to overthink it. Clemson has spurned me too many times, and I will not sit here and tolerate this disrespect to my name and my betting record. I bet 5 of 6 of my losses are from picking Clemson in these games where they're not scoring any points. So never again, Clemson, never again. Louisville all the way on this one.
Thanks for the stall there. Kind of lost it there for a second. I'm going Clemson. I feel like Louisville's fallen off a little bit over the last couple of weeks.
Oh, they have.
This isn't an endorsement for Clemson because I still don't think they're very good offensively, but I think defensively they'll be able to do enough to win the game by at least 4 points, which would get them the cover here. And fortunately for you, I don't have the updated standings, so you'll save the embarrassment of your overall record. But what's your wild card game of the week?
Auburn, Texas A&M looks juicy to me at 4.5 points. I see Texas A&M taking that game. It's at Texas A&M, 4.5 points. I realize it's a really even matchup on rankings, but obviously Texas A&M been super impressive this year. So gig 'em, Texas A&M at home, 4.5 points. I see that as a win all day.
I mean, how can you not
would think
go
covering a spread of 4.5 points at home?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
I like it.
I'm going Ole Miss Liberty. Lane Kiffin, Hugh Freeze goes back to Oxford.
I like that.
You're gonna have to tune into that one.
That's spicy.
Liberty is an 8.5 point dog. I think Lane just lays it on them. I think 8.5 points is 100%. Not enough. That line seems a little low to me. So yeah, I like Ole Miss to run Hugh Freeze and Malik Willis back to Lynchburg.
Oh, and you know that's going to be, oh man, they are going to take so much pleasure in that.
Yeah.
And I agree, that line is, they're giving Liberty way too much credit on that line.
Kind of like
and that's
they're
not to
giving Malik Willis
disrespect
too much
Liberty.
credit, but
Yeah, I agree. Which has been a theme for
it's a weak
entire
quarterback
season.
class this year.
We also need to discuss the fact that Satterfield may be as annoying to watch on the sideline as Pat Narduzzi. And we don't have to have that discussion today. I just want to make this season-long observation. I've realized is that he whines just as much as Narduzzi does.
Yeah, he is a whiner. He's also got some like certified psychos on that sideline that coach for him. I mean,
there are some OSHA violations. I mean, it's literally just a highlight reel of OSHA violations pregame.
Yeah. It's like a bunch of guys who like really wanted to be in the WWE, but had to settle for like Louisville.
You're right. They're those guys that did the home video in the backyard wrestling thing.
Yeah.
That's their outlet now.
They were like an extra on a Kimbo Slice street fighting video.
They're out of pocket, man. They're crazy.
Rest in power.
Crazy.
Kimbo.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show for the day. Any final words before we sign off?
No final words, except it's weird seeing you when we're talking. I'm going to have to get used to this. And sorry for laughing 4 or 5 times as we tried to kick this off. That was, for some reason, extremely hilarious to me because I've never seen you live do that before. And, we'll get better at this as time goes on.
Personally, I've never recorded myself doing it on video.
Oh yeah.
I've got it, so I can't even see myself on here. I just minimize the window, so I have no idea.
That's actually smart because I'm having a hard time. I keep looking at both you and my screens.
Am I even in the frame? I don't even know.
Yeah, no, you're half the frame. You're gallery view, so you're half.
Okay,
the frame.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show for the day. We're obviously talking about the video recording, so check out the YouTube channel, Chowder and Grits. That's where these will be posted. If you want to watch us on video or, watch it on your computer, whatever you guys want to do. And then, of course, the traditional Apple Podcast, Spotify. We're just glad you're listening. But, Tim, why don't you tell everybody what they can do for us?
Leave us a 5-star review. Tell your friends. Keep logging in on the Twitter sphere and talking to us during game days. Our apologies for the last game day as I was moving and telling movers where to place furniture. Justin was celebrating birthdays with beautiful children, and we just didn't have the time or the capacity to be tweeting too much. So our apologies. But again, keep interacting with us. Tell your friends. Leave some 5-star reviews on every platform you listen to, even Podbean, which I don't know why if you listen to Podbean, shout us out because I don't even know what that is, but I know we put out a link every damn week.
Podbean is that's essentially what's shooting out the RSS feed to everyone.
RSS feed. I have no idea what that is, but that's what it's doing. So keep RSSing till your heart's content. We appreciate it.
All right. See you guys later. Go Hokies, and talk to you next week.
Adios.